Hello my young friends and welcome to Study with Sudhir, your digital classroom. I am TS Sudhir. Today we are going to be looking at the history syllabus for ICSE class 9, and today's video lesson is going to be specifically on the Cholas, and we will be doing the Cholas. We will be dealing with the Cholas era in two parts because it's quite a lot of detail that we need to know and remember and understand. We've already done the Delhi Sultanate in two parts. We've also done the Mughal Empire in two parts. So please do have a look at those 4 video lessons in order to get a comprehensive understanding of medieval India. And once the Cholas is also done, that is like one bulky chapter dealt with quite comprehensively. So let's start with the Cholas. Now, essentially, we are now talking about the southern part of India, right? This is basically located south of the Krishna River. The Krishna River originates in modern day Maharashtra, flows through modern day Karnataka into Telangana and Andhra Pradesh before going into the Bay of Bengal. Now, the area south of the Krishna River, a large part of it was essentially inhabited by what were known as the Dravidians, which is why even today in modern day Tamil Nadu and earlier in Madras state, it is the Dravidians who rule the roost. The Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam and also the Anna Dravida Munnetra Kazhagam, the two principal regional parties, if you understand and are interested in the politics of Tamil Nadu. Now, this region was also known for its very rich language and culture, right? That was really what was known as their trademark, their hallmark. And over a period of time, there were 3 powerful kingdoms which essentially ruled in this part of India, which is now basically modern day Tamil Nadu to a large extent, right? The Cheras, the Pandyas and the Cholas, right? The most powerful of them were the Cholas. And they were the ones who really left their imprint on history for a long time to come, which is why even today in Tamil Nadu, and if you look at the literature of that era, some of the songs that kind of celebrate that particular era, the maximum references you will find will be to the Chola kingdom. There have been large number of Tamil movies which have been made again on the glory of the Chola Empire. Now, this is what we are talking about, the 9th century to begin with, the Chola Empire, and they kind of controlled a large part of what is known as the Indian peninsula. This was achieved by their ability to kind of build a powerful navy because they were also a rich kingdom. They also indulged in a lot of trade which brought in the riches because they took advantage of the fact that their kingdom was along the coast, so they did indulge in a lot of sea trade to conquer Sri Lanka and also what is known as the Maldives Islands now. And by the end of the 9th century, the Cholas had defeated both the Pallavas of Kanchi and weakened the Pandyas, therefore bringing the entire Tamil country, which is known as the Tonda Mandala, under their control. Okay, the entire Tamil country, modern day Tamil Nadu, was under the control of the Cholas. They defeated both the Pandyas as well as the Pallavas of Kanchi. Now, let's come to how do we know so much about the Cholas in 2020, right? One, the main source of information about what happened during that era is through inscriptions, and that also kind of tells you about the focus on education, language, culture that the Cholas emphasized on during their reign. Okay, the main source of information for the history of the Chola period is the large number of inscriptions of that period. Rajaraja I, who was one of the foremost Chola ruler, he had conceived the idea of prefixing his inscriptions to these inscriptions the main achievements of his rule. You know, whatever were the main achievements of his rule, he would kind of put that in inscriptions so that future generations would know about the kind of rule that was there under the Chola Empire. The inscriptions were in the form of what is known as the copper plate grants, you know, and also the stone inscriptions on the temple walls. But if you see some of the old time movies, there you would find this kind of copper plates on which a lot of these inscriptions would be written, right? They were known as and these are Tamil words which you need to remember, the Anbil and the Karandi. The Anbil, A-N-B-I-L, and the Karandi, K-A-R-A-N-D-I, and also the Kanyakumari stone inscription gave a long list of rulers indicating the solar origin of the Chola dynasty. They believed that they were the kind of the generation that of Cholas who ruled over modern day Tamil Nadu were essentially descendants of the sun god. Another set of copper plate contains 31 copper sheets. These plates are written in both Sanskrit and Tamil. Okay, which is why I mean, in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the United Nations had spoken about Tamil being the oldest language, right? Which is why it is considered so rich in the kind of language skills that Tamil has. It is considered one of the richest languages in India. Which is in fact one reason why there is always a lot of opposition to the imposition of Hindi on Tamil Nadu, because they believe that their language is in fact much more rich and older than Devanagari or Hindi, right? Then the second one is about the kind of inscriptions and what did these inscriptions essentially convey. That's something which you need to know. One, they kind of told us about the Chola administration, right, which was really the intention of the Chola rulers, especially Raja I and Rajendra Chola, the two main Chola rulers about who we will read about in a bit. They tell us about the Chola administration. For instance, the Uttara Merur inscription, which is known. You will need to remember some of these specifics because they could come as a 2-mark question in section 1, section A of your examination paper. The Uttara Merur inscription gives information on the village administration, taxation and land revenue. So you see, it is a very administrative kind of information that is given as part of these inscriptions, which is why we have a good idea about the kind of revenue records, the kind of administration, land administration that the Chola dynasty had under their rulers. Number 2, they also recorded the kind of gifts and endowments which could be in the form of land, which were given to both temples as well as the Brahmins. It was given to institutions or individuals. All that is also recorded as part of these inscriptions. For instance, and your textbook has an example of the Leyden grant, so called as they were preserved in the Museum of Leyden in Holland, okay, of Parantaka Chola, and those of the Parakesari Uttama Chola are among the most important. You may not really need these kind of details. They inform us about the construction of a temple or the setting up of a new image of the deity, which also gives you an idea about the religious bent of mind of the Chola rulers, right? That was the kind of, so that you get a good idea about the administration, you get a good idea about the kind of society that kind of thrived when the Cholas were ruling in the peninsular region. And number 4, some inscriptions have royal orders on taxation and land revenue, which is also earlier. Resolution passed by village assembly. So it also gives you an idea that it was not a centralized kind of administration. Even though there was a king who was ruling, the villages also had their own administrative structures in place. Judgments given against persons guilty of theft, murder or other crimes. So it also gives you a sense of the law and order system that was prevalent under the Cholas. Number 5, the inscription on temple walls served the purpose of public registrations such as the record of sales, mortgages and other forms of transfer of property from one person to another in a village or outside a village, from one institution to another, right? So these inscriptions were really the best form of understanding for historians what kind of rule was there under the Chola dynasty. Number 2, and this is the second part of the sources, is the Brihadeshwara temple, which is in Tanjavur city in Tamil Nadu, which is in the Kaveri Delta. I was there at the Brihadeshwara temple in the year 2016 and I am putting up this photograph that I clicked of the outside of the Brihadeshwara temple. Now the gateway of this temple is very majestic. It's one of the most majestic temples that you find in South India. The gateway is obviously called the Gopuram. In fact, most temples in South India, especially in Tamil Nadu, that you find have this rather majestic Gopurams. So is the case with the Brihadeshwara temple. The main shrine was known as the Garbhagriha, which is the Sanctum Sanctorum, where the image of the god or the goddess is kept. They are usually made of stone, largely made of stone in South India, especially Tamil Nadu, in some cases also of bronze. There is also something called the Mandapa, or which is also known as the audience hall, where the people would gather for darshan of the deity, right? Now the chief features of the Chola temples, and this is very peculiar to the kind of architecture that was there at that point in time in peninsular India, the southern part of India. Is there massive what is called as the Vimana or the towers and the very spacious courtyards. The temples would not be very constricted spaces. They would be very large and with a lot of space around the place where the Sanctum Sanctorum was located. So there were very spacious courtyards, and also we had something called the Vimana, which is again some kind of an architecture splendor it kind of endowed on the temple. The best example of the Chola temples is the Brihadeshwara temple, which is also known as the Raja Rajeshwari temple. It's dedicated, this presiding deity is Lord Shiva, right? It was built by the Chola king Raja Raja I in the 10th century, and it is considered one of the best examples of Dravidian style of architecture. In the Mughal Empire chapter, we read about the Mughal style of architecture, which was kind of encouraged by the likes of Shah Jahan in particular, who built the Red Fort, the Taj Mahal, etc. Here we are talking about the Dravidian style of architecture, and as I said, it would have this large courtyards, it would have the tower, which would in this particular case rise to a height of 190 feet, right? And it was crowned by a massive dome consisting of a single block of stone 25 feet high and weighing about 80 tons. These kind of details you may not really need, but for purpose of general knowledge, you could actually just remember some of this basic data. The massive temple building is covered from the base to the top with sculptures and decorative moldings. The shrine houses a gigantic Shivalingam cut in a monolithic rock about 8.87 meters high. So you can imagine the kind of imposing Shivalingam that is there inside this particular temple. It has many structures such as a Nandi pavilion. Nandi is the bull, which is the vehicle of Lord Shiva, a pillared portico and a large assembly hall. It's the finest monument of a splendid period of South Indian history and considered one of the most beautiful specimens of Tamil architecture. It's also been declared as a World Heritage Site by UNESCO, right? So that is as far as the two main sources of knowing what kind of reign was prevalent under the Chola dynasty, right? Now let's look at the political history and specifically about the two main rulers of the Chola dynasty. The first one Raja Raja I and the second one Rajendra Chola. Now the Chola Empire of course was established by Vijayalaya, that is the name of the Chola ruler who established the Chola dynasty, with Tanjavur as its capital, where the Brihadeshwara temple is located, right? And after his death, his grandson Parantaka I became the king. He conquered Madurai. Madurai is further south from Tanjavur. Tanjavur is of course there on the Kaveri delta itself. He defeated Pandyas, he defeated the rulers of Lanka, and by 11th century AD, the Chola power had reached the height of its glory. Raja Raja I and his son Rajendra Chola were the two prominent rulers. So let's first learn about Raja Raja I. Raja Raja I was a brilliant general. So in terms of military prowess, he was considered very, very sharp and he campaigned in many directions. He attacked the kingdoms of Pandyas and the Cheras, as we have already known, also Mysore, which is in modern day southern part of Karnataka, and he annexed parts of the Deccan, which is the modern day Telangana, Andhra Pradesh kind of area. He did this to prove the strength of the Chola power. He took some territories of Mysore, Travancore, which is the modern day southern part of Kerala. Okay, so you need to, when we are knowing about the words which are used at that time like Travancore, Deccan, Mysore, you should be able to correspondingly understand for your own knowledge and your ability to understand it geographically better what are the modern areas in modern day India. So Travancore is the southern part of Kerala, which would be extending from Trivandrum up to Kochi. And Coorg is the area which is between Mangalore, between coastal Karnataka and Mysore, the area of Coorg, the district of Coorg, which is now known as Kodagu. Now, where did the essentially the power come from? One of course is the military might and being able to control the sea routes. So, the coast of Kerala, Sri Lanka which was known as Ceylon at that point in time, and the Maldives Islands had become rich through the money that was sent to them through overseas trade India sent textiles, spices and precious stones to these West Asian countries. Primarily Raja I was aware of the importance of controlling the sea. This is something which you need to know, because this can come as a possible 3-mark question as to how did Raja I really control and become more powerful, more rich politically, administratively, militarily, okay, also culturally. So he decided that he would show his military strength along the coast of South India. That's why he took out a naval expedition and attacked both Maldives as well as Sri Lanka, and the conquest of Sri Lanka was completed, and with the crown and the royal insignia of the king and the queen of Sri Lanka being captured in a battle. That was very significant. Sri Lanka was not able to free herself from Chola control for the next 50 years. So this is extremely significant that Tamil Nadu at one point in time, the Chola Empire rather, was actually ruling over modern day Sri Lanka, or Ceylon as it was called at that point in time. Then he of course built the Rajarajeswara temple of Lord Shiva in Tanjavur, and on the walls of the temple are inscribed the main works of Rajaraja I, and under his rule the Cholas became the supreme power in southern India. The increase in trade is what brought the riches to his kingdom, which is known as Chola Mandal. Okay, Chola Mandal. In fact, the word Coromandel has been derived from Chola Mandal. In the 10th class geography book, when you are doing the map marking, you will learn about the Coromandel coast, which is essentially the coast of Tamil Nadu. So the word Coromandel is derived from Chola Mandal. In fact, there are 2 big companies in Tamil Nadu today, both actually using this word. Coromandel Fertilizers is a big group. The Cholamandalam group is considered one of the most premier industrial groups from Tamil Nadu. So, many of those words which are used during the Chola Empire still prevalent in modern day Tamil Nadu. Now, let's come to his son, who is Rajendra Chola, okay, who ruled from 1014 to 1044. That is, we are talking of 30-year rule. Rajendra Chola succeeded his father. He continued his father's policies. His campaigns were daring. Once his armies marched up to the east coast of India through Odisha and up to the Ganga river. Rajendra Chola himself led the army up to the Godavari, and thereafter his generals took charge of his army. The Chola army defeated Mahipala, who was the king of Bengal. To commemorate this victory, he adopted the title of Gangaikonda and built a new capital called Gangaikonda Cholapuram. So we are talking about probably not Uttar Pradesh, probably a little towards the east. This is something which came in the paper last year in 2020. In the 2020 paper, 9th class history paper, it came as to how did he take the title of Gangaikonda. So you need to know as to what happened because of which he took this title of Gangaikonda, and the fact that he had defeated the king of Bengal at that point in time. Now, he did not stop here because he was known as a daring general. His most daring campaign was in Southeast Asia, and Indian merchants had been trading for long with various parts of Southeast Asia and Southern China through the Straits of Malacca, which is held by the kingdom of Srivijaya, which is modern day Indonesia. And as the merchants of Srivijaya began creating problems for the Indian merchants appealed to Rajendra Chola for help. He sent out a huge navy and defeated the Srivijaya king. As a result, Indian trade with Southeast Asia and southern China continued, thereby greatly enriching the Chola kingdom. He built magnificent palaces and beautiful temples at his new capital Gangaikonda Cholapuram. So you see, the emphasis of Rajendra Chola, much like his father, was on increasing his military might, using it to a large extent, also focusing on trade and also the architecture, the Dravidian style of architecture, building both temples as well as palaces. So that was the hallmark as far as the Chola Empire was concerned under these two, the father-son duo of Rajaraja I and Rajendra Chola. Now in part 2 of this chapter, the Chola Empire, the Chola dynasty, we will read about what kind of administration was prevalent under the Chola administration. So once you do that, this entire medieval India chapter will be finished. The Chola Empire, the Delhi Sultanate and the Mughal Empire. Okay, so this has to be taken as one unit, which we would have done in 6 separate video lessons, and I am very sure you will find it very easy to understand and also a fascinating piece of history, period of history from the India of that time. And as I always say, read history like a story. enjoy the story. Think of it like your grandmother or your grandfather is telling you a story from a time of a bygone era, and if you just enjoy the story, then the learning part of it becomes that much more easy. Okay, so that's as far as part 1 is concerned. I'll see you again in part 2. Do revise this particular lesson, and don't forget to subscribe to Study with Sudhir and also press on the bell icon so that you can get regular updates on whatever is published on this channel for students of ICSE class 9. Thank you very much for watching.